Thank you.
Good afternoon, Molly Quasworth with Department of Finance. I'd just like to describe a few changes in the May revision with regards to the Awards for Innovation in Higher Education program. We're reallocating the $50 million in non-Proposition 98 General Fund appropriated in the 2014 Budget Act. Of that, $23 million would be allocated to Prop 98 to meet the Proposition 98 minimum guarantee. This amount reflects the awards that were made to 6 applications submitted by community colleges. The non-Proposition 98 funding that was provided in 2014-15 would be decreased to $27 million, reflecting the awards that were made to 8 CSU and UC campuses. The 2015-16 Governor's Budget proposal codified the Innovation Awards program to establish the program in statute. The May revision proposes to change the proposed trailer bill language to align the program's goals with those specified for post-secondary education in Chapter 367 SB 95 that was enacted in 2013. And lastly, the May revision proposal would provide an additional $25 million in one-time Proposition 98 General Fund for awards to community colleges that implement changes to policies, practices, or systems that meet the state's goals for higher education. In response to a concern raised in the agenda, we believe that the Innovation Awards are a good use of state funds to improve student outcomes in higher education. The 58 applications that were submitted in 2014-15 described a wide variety of innovations that campuses have put in place to help their students succeed. The 14 campuses that were selected to receive an award reported that they will use their awards to expand and scale their effective strategies. And at the awards reception held last month, there was a great deal of enthusiasm and energy displayed among the winners for sharing their practices with other institutions across the state. The state's $50 million investment in these awards spurred collaborations and partnerships between campuses in different educational segments, including K-12 student districts, to work together to help their students succeed. And we think that the Innovation Awards played a big role in kind of fostering these collaborations. Thank you.
Thank you. LAO's office, do you want to react to the finance report?
Certainly. You should have a handout there. And just to walk you through the first few pages, page 1 summarizes the community colleges Prop 98 funding and shows the $620 million of additional resources from the May revision over the 2-year period. Page 2 summarizes the spending changes that Mr. Nizam described. And then the next 3 pages go in some detail about the proposals, but Mr. Nizam has described them very thoroughly. So I will jump to page 6, where our assessment and recommendations begin. And starting in the middle of the page, you've already covered the first 2 items. We recommend approval on the mandate backlog payment. This proposal is consistent with the state's past approach of using one-time funds to pay down outstanding obligations. This is consistent with your staff recommendation as well, and in fact, your staff recommends devoting an additional $25 million in Prop 98 resources to reducing the mandate backlog. We also recommend approving the maintenance and instructional support funding. This, again, similarly would be a good use of one-time funds consistent with our overall recommendation to use additional funds for one-time purposes that pay down liabilities and infrastructure costs. Regarding the full-time faculty funding, we don't have a definitive recommendation on this. As you can see in the handout, both full-time and part-time faculty bring various advantages, and the evidence of an association between the percent of full-time faculty and student success is mixed. Some studies show evidence that having a higher percentage of full-time faculty supports student success. Other studies show no such association. So given the different costs and benefits and evidence, we just encourage you to weigh this against your other priorities. The staff did raise a concern in the agenda about the Chancellor's Office method of determining the cost to convert positions from part-time to full-time. And this relates to using the average cost for a full-time faculty person rather than the starting salary. Adopting the staff recommendation would have the effect of increasing the college's full-time faculty hiring obligation and decreasing district's flexibility in allocating these funds.
Okay, thank you. Move on now to the Community College Chancellor's Office.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, as I said earlier, we're very appreciative of the governor's May revision proposal, particularly for the augmentations relative to growth, the unallocated base increases, the new funding for deferred maintenance, the $15 million increase for institutional effectiveness, the full-time faculty proposal, and the increased funding for mandate payments in addition to other augmentations as well, but I did want to point out those in particular. In regard to the LEO's issue and the staff recommendation in regard to full-time faculty, if this is a good time to address that point, I'll go ahead and do that. We are supportive of the methodology that the governor proposed because we believe that tying the increase to the average conversion rate makes the most sense because that does reflect the average statewide cost. If we go down to the to a below average cost, that would do a couple of things. That would one, not create a potential deficit for districts as faculty, their salary grows over time, not just because of COLA, but because of step and column, and et cetera. And so districts may be underfunded for those obligations. Also, given that over time there could be a deficit, or it could actually have the impact of forcing down salaries for faculty. Districts might be more or less forced to hire faculty at a much lower salary, or that may affect bargaining down the road. So, from our view, we thought Finance's proposal was okay, and it seemed to have the support of the system to begin with. So, I think we're comfortable with leaving it where Finance proposed it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think I paused a little too long after the faculty item. I had a couple more issues with our recommendations, and also your staff has asked us to review the package that's before you
Okay,
today.
Ms. Hyman, if you would.
Sure. So back to our recommendations, we recommend you adopt a smaller pilot program for basic skills transformation. This is a very important issue for the community colleges, doing a better job with basic skills assessment and instruction. It's absolutely a high priority, but and we think that the model that the governor has proposed certainly has promise. But the community colleges have so many large initiatives before them right now that we have some serious concerns about their capacity to take on another large statewide initiative. So we would recommend that you do something on a smaller scale. I wouldn't even call it a pilot because these methods have been piloted already, but just in terms of expanding more slowly, and then in the future, you could take it further. We also recommend rejecting the basic skills partnership pilot program that would encourage partnerships between UC and CSU to do more of the remediation at community colleges. Again, the goal is laudable. The segment should be coordinating on basic skills instruction, but the particular proposal doesn't appear to be well developed. There are a number of unanswered questions, and there's just not time to work out all that needs to be worked out about it. The governor proposes funding 4 categorical programs. We recommend adopting that, and we also recommend extending that to other categorical programs that are affected by general cost increases, and that too is consistent with your staff recommendation. And finally, we recommend rejecting the Innovation Award funding, also consistent with your staff recommendation. We think that one-time awards that are based on past accomplishments are not likely to meet the program's objectives of advancing state higher education goals. So to review the package that's before you, as we understand it, includes an increase of $34 million in funding for EOPS, the Extended Opportunity Programs and Services. It's an increase of $15 million for the CalWORK Student Services and an increase of $3.5 million for part-time faculty office hours. Those 3 augmentations would get those programs back to their pre-recession funding levels. The package includes $17 million in startup funding for the baccalaureate degree pilot programs that were approved pursuant to SB 850, authored by Senator Block. There's an additional $200,000 to support the Academic Senate and its involvement in several statewide initiatives, including the SB 1440 transfer reform, the baccalaureate degree pilot projects, student success initiatives, and others. And the package includes $50 million in one-time resources for developing a common data and accountability system for courses funded under the Adult Education Block Grant. The resources would be for developing the statewide system as well as data collection systems necessary at the local level.
Thank you. With that, before I go to my colleagues for questions or comments, I just want to make a comment about process here. And this is kind of an unusual process we have in terms of the budget process here. I, for one, fully support more basic skills initiatives, and frankly, more importantly, better basic skills initiatives. I know a number of people may wish to speak to this, and we welcome your public comment. We have concerns, as does the LAO, about the particulars of the proposal, and we feel this should be a topic of discussion in conference committee between the Assembly and the Senate, and then further negotiations with the governor before a final proposal comes to the floor. As a result, in our recommendations, you'll see that we are rejecting the basic skills proposal, not because we don't believe in the importance of this basic skills work, and again, inviting members of the public to speak to that, but because if we accept it and the Assembly accepts it, then it doesn't get discussed any further, and the language doesn't get refined. So just wanted to say that for the purpose of my colleagues on the committee and also for our guests and those watching. Sometimes the budget process is counterintuitive. With that, Senator Allen.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a difference in opinion between committee staff and LAO. I mean, the LAO said that they thought the goals were laudable, but it was not well thought through. So
No, I think it's the same. Go ahead.
Just to clarify, there are two basic skills proposals. There's the larger $60 million
right.
proposal, and that one, we're just concerned about capacity to implement it. Then there's the $2 million partnership proposal. That's the one that we don't think that is well thought through, and I think
I'm sorry.
I think your
Okay.
staff agrees with that.
So capacity. Okay, I understand. Okay, I appreciate the chair's clarification on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Morlaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We started this meeting with your challenge to both the LAO and the DOF on who's doing a better job of projecting revenues. And so the LAO has projected $99 million more in revenues, and that's why we're here on this item. So, Ms. Hyman, explain yourself here. You're supposed to be helping me out here. So we've already given $267 million in unallocated funds, and now we have to hope that these funds arrive. And if they don't arrive, what happens? If your projection is incorrect and the governor's is right, what are we doing to ourselves?
One option you have is I believe heard this morning, although I wasn't listening during the earlier part of the agenda, is to allocate the funds later in the year, particularly if they are for items such as mandate backlog payments and deferred maintenance. You can always do that next May, and then you wouldn't be taking as large a risk if the funds don't materialize. Another option, if your concern is that revenues will decline, not so much in 15-16, but further in the future, is to make sure to use them for one-time purposes so that you'll have the flexibility to reduce those items without getting at ongoing core programs when you need to make reductions in the future.
Okay, I'm a little more comfortable with the governor's numbers on this one than committing to something, Mr. Chair. So that's sort of where I'm falling.
Sure. Understood. Any other comments or questions from committee members before we go to the general public? Does Finance have a comment?
Yes, Chris Ferguson with Finance. I think we have global concerns with using the legislative analysts' higher revenue projections. Our package is predicated on the governor's revenue projections. As such, a lot of the augmentations that are proposed by staff in the agenda, we would therefore have concerns with. We do support both the basic skills and student outcomes transformation program for one time of $60 million. We support the Community College, California State University Partnership Pilot Program for $2 million. And just again, we have a number of general concerns on the augmentations that are predicated on those higher revenues. Lastly, we would associate our comments on full-time faculty with those of Mr. Troy relative to using the $70,000 average salary for conversion.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Troy?
Yes, Mr. Chair, would this be the appropriate time for me to address the subcommittee's augmentations?
Sure.
Okay, good. Firstly, we'd like to thank you for that, for recognizing the value that our system provides to students and the important role we serve in ensuring a strong workforce for California. So we thank you for the additional investment as a whole. Some items I in particular would like to point out is we're appreciative of your attention to EOPS, CalWORKS, the part-time office hours. The $200,000 for the Academic Senate is a really excellent return on investment for the state. We asked them to do so much vis-a-vis some of the initiatives we have, and a little bit of money there goes a long way, so we're very appreciative of that. The increase for deferred maintenance and for mandates as well is greatly appreciated. And we do have a couple of questions about some of the augmentations, and we appreciate that there's time to talk about this over the next few days before conference makes its final calls. But I think we'll need to get a little bit more information about the Adult Education Consortia data systems. As more detail comes out to that, we'll have to see if the Chancellor's Office will need more positions to help implement those changes. Another question we have is that the $500 million for the adult ed proposal broadly was scored outside of the K-12 community college split, so we think it would probably be appropriate to conform this action to that if this is approved in the final budget. And I think those are the major comments I wanted to make at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Troy. Any other comments from the panel or questions from the committee? Seeing none, I know there are several people who want to comment on this in the public, so I'll ask members of the panel to step down for the time and ask any members of the public who wish to comment to come on up, fill the seats at the table, and then form a line. Just please fill all 4 seats, and we'll move from left to right. And after you've made your comments, you have up to a minute, and you can provide any additional written documentation you wish to. State your name and organization you represent.
Mark McDonald again, McCallum Group. And I do want to just, realizing the time limit, just state a quick thank you to the administration for their proposed budget and this committee's proposed augmentations. They go a long way for student access and success. Just to address a couple items. Number one, you asked on the basic skills feedback. I think the LAO is right. There are a lot of programs out there right now. We think that some of the money ought to go out to a study so that we can look at a holistic approach for basic skills. It is the top issue in community colleges right now, and taking a holistic approach to basic skills and then moving forward perhaps next year on how we go to fund that and attack that might be the best way of going. On the full-time faculty issue, we would put our comments with those of the Chancellor's Office. We agree that the Department of Finance proposal is a good one. We are very concerned of some of the unintended consequences that may occur if we decrease that number too low. And then finally, on the CSU basic skills proposal, we would agree with the LAO. And on another note, we have issues with Prop 98 money being used for non-Prop 98 purposes, just a fundamental opposition to that.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you.
Ashley Situde with Nosman on behalf of North Orange County Community College District. Want to thank, first of all, the Governor and Department of Finance for the proposal, the May revised proposal. We're supportive of all of the augmentations that have been increased in the May revise. We do have a couple of notes with the full-time faculty. Very supportive of the Department of Finance's recommendation. With regard to adult education, we are very thankful for the removal of the allocation committee in the May revise. However, we do have some concerns about tying the non-credit apportionment receival to being a consortium member. We're going to flesh some of those ideas out in a comment letter to you all. And we're also interested in how the committee envisions that $50 million allocated for outcomes with adult education. A data system is highly needed in order to prove our successes and show areas of improvement with the rolling out the new AB 86 implementation process. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Sarah Arce on behalf of the Campaign for College Opportunity. We'd first like to thank the Chair for his comments he made earlier with regards to the basic skills provision. We are very concerned and encourage you to consider the Governor's proposed Community College Basic Skills and Student Outcomes Transformation Program. This is a critical investment that the state can make now that will have a tremendous impact on student success in community colleges. Over 70% of entering community college students are assessed as underprepared for college-level work and in need of remediation. And we also know that 2/3 of all students in remedial ed will fall out of the system, which means they're not obtaining their certificate, their degree, or transferring. At the same time, there are high-impact practices that are making a real difference and significantly reducing the time students spend in remediation. And these proven practices are already occurring in pilot form at less than 1/3 of campuses. So the intent of the transformation program is to do just that, scale up existing pilot programs into a transformative program across the system.
Thank you so much. Next speaker.
Barbara Barron from the California EDGE Coalition. We're a coalition of business, labor, and social justice organizations. And our organization has, for years now, recognized that while the colleges have lots of initiatives and priorities, we've argued that the basic skills crisis is the key to moving the needle on student success. And I just... it's critical to recognize how this is not marginal. 70 to 80% of students is what we're talking about here. If the dismal outcomes that Sarah just described were God-given, we'd have to accept them. The fact is that we have more than a decade now's evidence from around the country and from here on the fact that the high-impact practices in the Governor's May revise are transformative, literally transformative, in terms of student outcomes. Therefore, really shame on us if we don't move from piloting them to offering them to all students within our system.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mr. Chairman and members, my name is Marlene Garcia, and I'm here on behalf of TechNet and Tech America, two associations that represent tech industries in the Silicon Valley and beyond. And I'm here to support the Governor's Basic Skills proposal, and it really is a key part of what the community colleges do. Without succeeding and producing greater learning outcomes and basic skills, it's difficult to get students through that pipeline and out into the workforce so that they can take the kinds of high-skilled jobs that are out there. And as the tech industry, we feel really very strongly that we have that kind of skill base available in our workforce. So we're in strong support of maintaining the 60 million, and that the faculty are given the support to actually start designing these new, redesign these courses reflective of these best practices, and that faculty need the support and to make that change. The second point is just want to say we also support the 23 million in innovation funds for community colleges. We think that that's important to really support innovation and to really encourage that, colleges are preparing students for that 21st century workforce. Thank you.
Thank you.